Hello everyone, over the last few days I've been catching up with some of the deluxe Marvel Legends figures from 2024 that I didn't get to cover previously, and today I'm going to finally catch up with a figure I think that was released way back in the summer of 24, but I finally got my hands on, and that is the Jean Grey Phoenix. Of course, this isn't the first Phoenix we've had in the Marvel Legends line. We've actually had a handful already to date, and we've had various different versions. We've had the green costume and we've had the red, but this obviously is the green costume. I was originally in two minds because we have had other successful versions in the past, but I finally bit the bullet because I was really impressed by that Phoenix figure in the background. So without further ado, let's kick off by taking a look at the packaging. And interestingly, unlike the other deluxe figures that we've just seen recently, this doesn't have the 85th anniversary branding. This has very clear Phoenix branding, which is kind of cool, but it is largely similar in the sense that it does have, it's oversized and it has those black borders, although we can see a little bit of flame as it overlaps onto the side panel, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But we can see this fantastic window display, we can see the figure, and of course the Phoenix in the background there, and there's even a little bit of yellow on that interior card as well, showing some flames, which looks pretty cool, makes this a very exciting figure to put on display. As we can see, Hasbro have made really good use of this side panel. I like the approach they take here by putting some illustrated artwork on it. It's largely text-free, in fact it is completely text-free, and it looks really nice on display on its side profile. Then if we flip it over and look at the reverse of the packaging, rather than having that illustrated image, what we have here is this photograph of the figure in all its glory, and I think this is an interesting approach. It's a little bit different to what we've had previously, and I think it looks pretty impressive actually. Now, at first glance, when you free this figure from its packaging, you could be forgiven for thinking you've seen this figure before, and this is essentially just a repaint of existing figures, but that actually isn't the case. If we start off by taking a look at this head sculpt, this is actually a brand new head sculpt. I actually do really like the paint apps that have applied to this figure. We can actually see a lot of detail, particularly in the eyes and the lips there, that look quite lifelike and realistic, which is a nice approach. There's even a little bit running through the hair as well, very faint wash there to give it a little bit more depth and texture and realism, which is really nice. They've opted to give her slightly wavy hair as if it's blowing in the wind. I think that's perfectly appropriate for the Phoenix because she's going to be in flight most of the time. I tend not to favour this because it kind of sticks you in one sort of pose really, or it gives the character one look, but I think it works. I think it works absolutely fine here, and let's face it, we do have alternate heads that we can pop on ourselves from previous versions if we so wish. Now, when it comes to the body sculpting, yes, we have seen a number of these pieces used before. That a lot has been recycled here from other characters and indeed even past versions of the Phoenix. Okay, but there's actually some subtle differences here from the most recent release, which was that Dark Phoenix from a couple of years ago, and I will compare these two later on. But what's new here is essentially the top of the torso. We actually have that butterfly wing joint, and actually it is slightly different there, and the pelvic piece is brand new and slightly different to what we've seen previously as well. I really like the use of gold paint that we see on the Phoenix logo there, on the emblem on the chest. I think that looks really, really good. It's very striking. Sadly, they didn't bother to do this on the actual belt where we can see the same symbol sculpted in there. They did actually do this on the previous Dark Phoenix release, so it's disappointing they didn't just recycle that because that's a nice touch. My other gripe is that they didn't take this opportunity to actually sculpt in the gloves or the boots. Once again, these have just been painted in, and you know, it works. It's a nice paint that they've used and a nice plastic. It's a slightly metallic looking gold, which, you know, works well. I just wish they actually sculpted this in because, you know, when they paint on these details, it's never quite as convincing, and it looks better when it's actually sculpted in. So let's move on to the articulation. She does have a ball joint at the top of the neck, so she can spin her head from side to side and lean it left and right just about, but that hairpiece is going to be a bit of a barrier there. But she can just about nod her head up and down, although it's not particularly convincing. Now, she does have this fantastic butterfly wing joint at the top of the shoulder there. I love this. This works really, really well. She has the ball joint in the shoulder as well, so you can get a huge range of motion out of this upper arm. She does have the bicep swivel, and she has a double joint at the elbow there, which is fantastic, so she can get her hand all the way back to her head there. The hand itself is on a pin swivel, so of course that will rotate all the way around, and it will hinge forwards and backwards. She has 2 points of articulation, one in the upper torso and an ab crunch in the lower torso, meaning she can move from side to side and has a huge range of motion when it comes to bending forwards and backwards. The belt sash, of course, is a movable piece, so if you slide that up, you can see that bottom ab crunch there, which is pretty cool. And of course, she has ball joints in the hips there, allowing the legs to kick out to the side. There's a complementary thigh swivel at the top there. The leg will kick forwards, it'll go backwards a little bit, and there's another double joint this time at the knee, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back, before finally we have that ankle rocker there, allowing that foot to hinge forwards and backwards and pivot from side to side. In terms of accessories, she comes with an additional pair of closed fists. She then has 3 separate plastic pieces which snap together to form the basis of the display stand. And let's not forget, she also has an alternate head as well, which is a very cool Phoenix Force head with the white of the eyes, which looks very impressive. And then finally we have the Phoenix itself, which is a one piece but actually has articulation in the head, which is quite a nice touch. I wasn't expecting that, and I think this is a really nice translucent plastic piece which looks really, really good. And before we look at that Phoenix in more detail, let's take a look at this head sculpt first so we can see the differences here. Obviously this is a more wild look. I think this looks really cool. Again, this is a brand new sculpt. We haven't had this before, and I think it looks really striking. And there's even a little bit more depth and texture, I think, in terms of the paint wash running through the hair there, which makes this look a bit more impressive. Of course, a much more stern expression, and the white of the eyes there look pretty fearsome. So a nice job all in all. Now, I personally found the display base a little bit fiddly to put together. It's not the most intuitive, but after you persevere a little bit and snap the various pieces into place and you finally slot in the Phoenix, I have to say it does look pretty impressive, and it's a very nice display stand. I like that it's translucent plastic, so if you had a light you could shine it through and it would glow up really nicely, and I think the way this is sculpted is quite beautiful actually. We've seen similar things in the past, but never on this scale or this elaborate before, and I don't think we've ever had the Phoenix itself presented in such a large format or so well executed before. Now, your Jean Grey figure can actually slot into this display stand as you would hope, and it can look pretty impressive. Now, I'm not sure what is the proper way of doing this. I did struggle with this, but I found a way to just slot her ankle into place. That seemed to hold her nice and securely, and she looks pretty cool in this position. Now, before I wrap up, I did want to quickly show her against the previous Dark Phoenix release that we had not too long ago, so we can see some of the differences between the two. Now, in terms of height and scaling, of course, they're exactly the same height, but we can see the use of colour is interesting, whereas they opted for the brighter yellow on the Dark Phoenix. Here we've gone for the more metallic golds, which definitely look far superior. Of course, the belt sash is the same, the legs are the same, even the arms are the same, but we can see that the torso is actually very, very different, especially if we look at the pelvic there and we look at the chest, how different they are. And then, of course, we have that wonderful butterfly wing joint on this new release that we did not have on that previous Dark Phoenix release. Now, I must say, I actually like that previous release. I think it works really well. I particularly like the head sculpt on it, but of course, you now have the opportunity to take that head if you want and put it on this body, and I think it would work pretty well. Okay, so final thoughts from me. I'm actually going to give this figure the full 5 stars. I was super impressed with it, I have to say. Now, this is a figure I and ahhed about. It wasn't one that I was all in on. In fact, I very nearly passed on it altogether because I thought, well, I've had a number of different Phoenixes across the years. How many more do I need in terms of variants? But actually, this one is probably the pièce de résistance. I think this is the best one I have in my collection, and I'm really glad that I finally picked her up because this is super impressive as a display piece. I love that Phoenix behind her. I think she looks really nice. The paint taps, the articulation, everything about this figure just works. It takes everything that worked previously and it just builds on that and just tweaks things ever so slightly to make them even better. Just take it up another notch. So I think top marks to Hasbro. They've really knocked it out of the park here, and I think this is probably the definitive version of the Phoenix in my collection for the time being. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.